Maxwell was a man on a mission. A successful Hollywood director with a string of hit movies behind him, he was ready to take on the challenge of creating the scariest horror film the world had ever seen. It was a passion project, one that would redefine the genre. Aaron poured every ounce of his energy into the script, the set design, the eerie sound effects, and the terrifying makeup. Everything had to be perfect. But he knew there was one thing that could make or break the film: the lead actress. After an exhaustive search, Aaron found her, a striking, mysterious woman named Evelyn Ward. She had no prior acting experience, but her beauty was mesmerizing, and there was something in her eyes that intrigued him. It was as though she carried an unspeakable secret within her. He hired her, convinced she was the perfect fit for the role. The shooting began in a decrepit mansion on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The atmosphere was thick with the weight of the building's dark history, a former asylum, now abandoned and decaying. Aaron had chosen the mansion for its isolation, perfect for a movie about a haunted house. The actors and crew were on edge from the moment they arrived, and as the night went on, the mansion seemed to breathe, creak, and whisper, adding an eerie layer to the production. But something was wrong with Evelyn. The first few scenes were strange. Her performance was wooden, emotionless. The words seemed to fall from her lips without any conviction. The director was puzzled. He'd seen bad acting before, but this was different. There was no warmth, no depth to her. She was hollow, like an empty shell. He had cast her for her captivating presence, but on set, she was a blank canvas. As the days passed, Aaron grew frustrated. He tried coaching her, explaining the scenes, but it was like she couldn't, or wouldn't, understand. Her eyes were the most unnerving part. Whenever he tried to speak to her, they would lock with his, cold and unblinking, and a shiver would run down his spine. It was as if her gaze was trapping him, holding him in place, rendering him unable to speak. He tried to break the connection, but each time the sensation grew stronger. He couldn't tear himself away from her gaze. Soon, Aaron began to question everything. The atmosphere of the mansion, the strange behavior of Evelyn, the growing unease among the crew. It was all adding up to something far darker than he had anticipated. One night, after the camera stopped rolling, he followed Evelyn down the long, shadowy hallways of the mansion. He planned to confront her, to tell her she was being replaced. But when he tried to speak, his throat constricted. The words wouldn't come out. He looked up and saw her, Evelyn standing at the end of the corridor, her back to him. Her long black hair swayed in the air, though no wind stirred. He took a hesitant step toward her, but then he froze, his heart pounding as he saw her turn slowly. Her eyes were no longer human. They were dark pits, void of life, glowing with an unnatural red hue. A flicker of movement passed behind her as if something, or someone, was watching him from within. "Director," Evelyn's voice was low and guttural, a sound that wasn't entirely hers. "Do you want to know what I am?" His breath caught in his chest. The words were not just strange, they felt dangerous. Before he could react, the air around him grew cold, and the lights flickered, plunging the mansion into darkness. When the lights came back on, Evelyn was gone. The next day, Aaron's mind was in a whirlwind of fear and confusion. He tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, a bad night's sleep, too much stress. But something inside him told him that Evelyn was not what she seemed, that she had never been who she seemed. Later that evening, he found an old journal hidden in the back of the mansion's library. It was written in a language he couldn't understand, but the last few pages were written in English, detailing the life of a woman named Isabel Blackthorne, a woman who had lived in this mansion long before it had been abandoned. Isabel had been rumored to be a witch, one who dabbled in dark rituals and black magic. The journal described how she had died mysteriously, but not before casting a final spell to bind her soul to another. Someone young, someone innocent. Aaron couldn't help but feel his blood run cold. He pieced together that the very mansion they were filming in had been the site of Isabel's final ritual, and Evelyn was not an actress at all. She was the witch, Isabel, reincarnated, her spirit bound to this world, seeking to finish what she had started. That night, Aaron tried to confront Evelyn one last time. As he entered her trailer, the door slammed shut behind him with a deafening thud. The lights went out. He spun around, but in the darkness, a cold hand clamped over his mouth, pulling him into the shadows. "Evelyn," he gasped, his breath shallow and panicked. He tried to break free, but his body felt heavy. The voice that answered him wasn't hers, not anymore. "I told you, Director," the voice whispered in his ear, cold and ancient. "You've made a grave mistake." Suddenly the walls around him seemed to pulse, breathing as though the house itself was alive. Shadows twisted and stretched, and a chorus of whispers filled his ears. He could see eyes, thousands of them, watching him, glowing faintly in the dark. And there in front of him, Evelyn, Isabel, stood, her face now a mask of pure malevolence. The air was thick with dark magic, and the ground trembled beneath his feet. "You wanted a movie, didn't you, Director?" she hissed. "Well, now you'll be part of mine." The last thing Aaron saw were her eyes, empty, cold, and filled with the void. And then, everything went black. The next morning, the crew found the mansion eerily quiet. The cameras were still rolling, but there was no sign of Aaron, no sign of anyone except for Evelyn. She was standing in the middle of the set, her face expressionless as the crew approached. "Is he?" one of the actors asked. But Evelyn merely smiled, a cold, chilling smile, and whispered, "He's part of the story now." Days passed, and the crew began to disappear one by one. Whispers of the curse spread. The movie was abandoned, its footage lost, except for a final shot captured on camera. A chilling image of Aaron standing in front of the mansion, his eyes wide open, filled with terror. Some say the footage is still out there, waiting to be found. Others say Aaron's spirit is still trapped in that haunted mansion, forever bound to the cursed film that never should have been made. And if you ever find yourself near the mansion, listen closely. You might hear Evelyn's voice calling out from the shadows, still waiting for her next victim.